All right, so this is social media buzzes during vice presidential debate. So this is going to give us kind of a wide open look of what was being said immediately after the debate, and what this is from CBS News. So let's see what social media thought about the debate, and we'll go through the whole thing.
Senator Kamala Harris faced off in the only 2020 vice presidential debate last night, and as always, Anne-Marie, social media was buzzing. You like how I did that?
Oh, that's good.
That's
you
pretty
did
good,
do it better
right?
than
That's
me.
pretty good. The most viral moment,
Yeah.
of course, came when a fly landed on.
All right, this is 2020 in a nutshell, right? We have a vice presidential debate, and probably one of the most important presidential debates, certainly of my lifetime. And the first story, the immediate reaction, was a small insect, a fly, landed on Pence's head during the debate. Now, let me remind you, and I just want to put this in your ear. Whenever you see this, whenever you see the reaction from this, remember that a fly landed on Hillary Clinton's face during one of her debates, and it was a very different take. We didn't see as many people saying, flies land on shit, flies land on rotting corpses, whatever. And it's just interesting to see the narratives and how fast that happens. So, New York Times, The Hill, Fox News, USA Today, CNET, thank you all for your incredible service to our social justices, or to our social economic system, or just our culture, with this incredible news.
On Mike Pence's head and stayed there for like 2 minutes as he discussed race in America. For more on this, let us bring in CNET senior producer Dan Patterson.
For more on the fly, let's bring in Dan. Dan, please, God, tell us more about the fly that was there for a whole 2 minutes. Dan, take it away.
Dan, we understand that there are some serious problems facing the country right now, and they deserve serious responses from our elected officials, but...
Dan, look, I know the whole world is burning, or I know the nation is burning right now. I know there's riots in the streets. I know there's civil unrest. I know we have a very serious, very polarized election coming up. I know there are riots bursting through at this very moment. California is burning. COVID is running rampant. More than 250,000 people have died from the very serious viral disease. But the fly, Daniel.
People sometimes need a little bit of break, a little bit of something else to talk about. So let's talk about the popular trends that we witnessed across social media yesterday evening. What'd you see?
Yeah, hey, look, Vlad, you stole my joke. Let's put last night's trends into two buckets. One is kind of sober and challenging. The other is humorous. We do need a little levity in this perpetual campaign. So
by the way, this mouse right here is not my mouse. That is CBS. Fantastic job, guys. Just have a mouse planted right here.
The fly was overwhelmingly the most popular trend. In fact, we pulled some data about this. There were hundreds of thousands of mentions of the fly. Some of these were funny memes, and it was.
So you
Wow.
didn't get the.
Issues like social justice, socialized healthcare, issues like that, abortion, Iran, climate change, all took a back seat to the fly. Way to go, America.
Then I also pulled Major League Baseball, which is in the middle of a playoff season right now. We have a major market team, the Los Angeles Dodgers, battling this upstart team, the San Diego Padres. Manny Machado, record-setting home run and salary. Crickets. Nobody cared. The fly clobbered the Manny Machado home run. All right, so in the sober bucket, the number one trend that we saw last night was that neither candidate appeared to be willing to answer questions. In fact, we saw this trend from almost the opening question directed at Senator Harris.
That an insect stole the show pretty much sums up how much this debate will alter the trajectory of the race. No, what the insect stealing the show shows, a little stutterer there, is what's important in our culture nowadays. It's what's more important is what they're wearing, what they look like, what flies are happening, things like that. What's not important is any kind of policy whatsoever.
And perpetuating through the rest of the debate. In fact, there was a lot of frustration directed at Mike Pence. about not answering questions. However, we saw a significant, a higher volume of activity that appears to be, we don't know for sure, but appears to be authentic, attacking Senator Harris over and over and over throughout the night. When we say inauthentic, these are likely bots and sock puppets.
What an interesting, I mean, this is obvious. I mean, it's just like, can we not have a slant? I mean, you heard that, right? You heard, I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, how dumb do they think we are? How dumb do they think you are? Please, guys, please do something about this. This guy, just Big Daddy Dan, just told us there was a lot of people upset about Mike Pence not answering questions. There were a lot of people allegedly upset about Senator Harris. Now, we don't know if they're bots. These could be fake people. Why would anyone be upset with Senator Harris? So, you know, I'm not sure if these are real or not. The Mike Pence criticism, that was 100% real, but we're not totally sure about the bots and stuff here.
Puppets are accounts that are run by real people, but are kind of in place only to troll or to post negative information. And we saw a lot of this directed at her gender. We saw a lot of racial stuff, pretty sober, gross kind of content directed at Senator Harris.
Yeah, what David's saying here, I'm feeling nostalgia. This reminds me of a normal debate when politicians don't answer good questions and respond with canned mini speeches. That's what I was saying. This is kind of more of what we usually see in debates, where they use the question to kind of steer them towards which one of their rehearsed mini speeches they're going to throw out there. No one expects people to come out here and just be totally truthful. I mean, it's a debate. It's not an interrogation. So I'm not surprised that both Harris and Pence dodged questions. It's just a bit frustrating, some of the questions they dodged, just like with Harris in the Supreme Court, where these are things that if you're voting for these people, like, you need to know this stuff. I mean, it's really important before you circle the name or fill in the bubble of what you're voting for. And some of the questions they dodged really leave you wondering what exactly the parties are doing.
That's really, I mean, I suppose that's not surprising. I want to dig in a little more to that, but I want to also just talk about what kinds of online attacks you saw against the vice president, but also the Democratic nominee.
What you're going to see here, I guarantee you he's going to say that the attacks towards Harris were against her gender and race, because that's the narrative, right? The narrative that they want to push is she's an African-American female in a debate situation, and so people aren't happy that she's a woman or an African-American. That's going to be what they say about that. Pence is going to be about how he dodged questions. Maybe he was like mansplaining. They may do that. They might harp on the COVID thing, but that's what you're about to hear.
On the internet, it occurred to me that perhaps The Fly was so popular because this was a rather sober, example of a debate. There weren't a lot of zingers. There wasn't a lot of other stuff to talk about, and so and perhaps some people could define that as a little more boring. And so The Fly.
Like, how crazy is this? We're a couple weeks away from the Trump-Biden disaster, and now people are like, oh man, that debate was kind of boring. Like, that's how much we want theater. That's how much we want reality TV, where we're saying, yeah, our debates were kind of boring. A debate can't be boring. A debate shouldn't be exciting either. Like, it should just be a debate. It should just be, there shouldn't be zingers flying around and hot moments and viral moments. Like, there should just be two politicians or two candidates talking about their policies, talking about their belief for the countries. It shouldn't be like a mini series. It shouldn't be The Walking Dead.
Fly became the superstar. But in terms of the types of online attacks that Pence saw versus Harris, what did you kind of find?
Anne-Marie, you're exactly right. This was a little more sober debate, and it's kind of easy and fun to jump into some of these funnier memes about The Fly. But in reality, we saw a high volume of attacks directed at Senator Harris. Again, like I said earlier,
if you took a shot every time this guy blinked, you would already be dead.
Directed at her gender, about her abilities as a prosecutor. We saw quite a few birther tweets emerge. And this was primarily on Twitter that we saw this, although we know that this content exists on Facebook and Instagram. Those networks are a lot more opaque. It's hard to get a sense of what's happening on Facebook in real time. In Twitter, look, the birther thing has been around with Senator Harris for far too long, and it continued. In fact, we saw kind of an uptick last night. So this is not funny stuff that we see amplified by what looks like inauthentic accounts. And what I'm using here are a few different tools. One is called Data Miner, which crawls through the internet in real time looking for trends. And the other is called Meltwater Social, which is kind of like Excel or a spreadsheet for social media. And it allows us to get a picture, a snapshot of what's happening. Unfortunately, the snapshot that we saw, the volume of let's say negative, and we look at the sentiment as well, negative tweets directed at Senator Harris versus Vice President Pence was disproportionately skewed towards Harris.
Why did you find, or is there a way to take a look at the trends and the data and to sort of understand why she is such a target?
Well, the why, the motivation, Vlad, is kind of hard to parse, and I might want to leave that to experts who are better understanding the politics. But what we have seen through the course of this campaign are inauthentic accounts, and we use bot sentiment.
All right, so I'm not even really sure what the hell Dan's talking about here. So all I know is he's using a couple different things to figure out the trends, and there was more negative remarks towards Harris than Pence. Then he goes on to say that he believes that they may be inauthentic accounts to discredit the negative thing. I'm not even real sure because he's talking about birther, he's talking about race, he's talking about gender, but he's not being really specific on what kind of negativity it is. It just might be inauthentic accounts. So I'm not. That was a whatever 20 seconds of I'm not really sure what the hell he's even talking about.
To track some of these, attacking Democratic challengers on not just policy issues, but on some kind of uncomfortable issues. We saw Pete Buttigieg, for example, attacked for his sexual preference by QAnon through the early part of the campaign. During the impeachment trial, we saw a lot of inauthentic activity directed at Joe Biden. And now, when Harris emerged this summer as the probable likely vice president nominee, we saw just these rapid fire attacks at her gender, her ethnicity. We saw many questioning her sexual preference. There were kind of just really gross and uncomfortable attacks that were not policy focused directed at Senator Harris and all of the Democrats this spring.
So every Democrat is receiving inauthentic, possibly inauthentic, negative tweets about their race, sex, and gender. Got it.
So, we've talked about this a lot, that there's just a ton of misinformation online. But I remember sort of in the early days of Twitter, one of the things that I really enjoyed about it is that during a live event, I could tap into the conversation that was happening, and I could also get additional information. Fact-checking is so important nowadays. Can we talk a little bit about how social media can actually be helpful, particularly when we're talking about debates like this?
Yeah, Anne-Marie, I remember those good old days on social media as well. Look, I was in the Twitter beta, and this was more like a
low-key flex. Mans was in the Twitter beta. Wow, Dan, big moment, brother. Master Killer, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
email platform, data in, data out. And you could connect with not just your everyday person, but you could connect with thought leaders and experts who had a real understanding and grasp of issues on policy and entertainment and almost everything else. Look, those good old days are gone. I would encourage you. Look, I don't want to prescribe behavior, but I think it would be a challenging thing to fact check anything using social media. I try hard not to engage in the snarkiness that exists on Twitter.
There is absolutely no fact checking on Twitter anymore. I'll tell you that right now. The only way you can fact check is if you take something you see on Twitter and go to like one of these legitimate fact checking websites that tells you if something is true or not. Like recently I saw where Trump said that he didn't have DNA, he has USA or something like that. And everyone was sharing it on Twitter. So I immediately went and looked and see if it was real. Boom. I forgot which website it was. Turns out that it was not true. And, so the only way you can do that is if you go to like a third party and check it for yourself. But as far as Twitter or any of these social medias, no, there is no fact checking there. If anything, there is so much misinformation that it's impossible to know what's true and false.
It's just it's just a different place now. I would not use social media to fact check. I would use credible news organizations to check facts.
There aren't even many of those.
Social media can be a place where we go to do a lot of things. It's just not a good place to double check actual hard facts and science. Use credible organizations. Use universities, journalists, scientists. That's who you should use to fact check debates.
That's a great point.
I can think of a credible organization.
I was going to say. Go ahead, Anne-Marie. tell.
CBS News. Head to our CBS News website. You will find a treasure trove of information to help you understand what you heard at the debate last night.
And
right?
it's free.
It's free.
Yeah, let's see what CBS News. Let's see what they were writing. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Mike Pence fly memes land on the vice presidential debate. Thank you, CBS News. I appreciate that very much for your hard-hitting stories.
Dan, real quick, did you see anything trending over the eye, the pink eye, whatever that was, conjunctivitis?
Thank you, CBS News.
Or, because there were, what's interesting about that, Dan, you talked about fact-checking on social media. I found it intriguing that you had people who say that they're medical doctors sort of offering like spot analysis, spot diagnosis, just by what they were seeing. And, that gets retweeted and that gets shared a lot because people say, well, that person's an MD or that person has an expertise in this field. And so, yeah, there's one right there who happens to be an actor, but that's Camille Nanjiani.
Yeah.
But yes, and this is also an actor. But I know that I saw a lot of doctors.
I mean, CBS just went through 30 seconds of saying only fact check with doctors or scientists or researchers or whatever. And then what's the first thing they do? They go to two actors to talk about the diagnosis of pink eye for Pence. Like even as they're talking about it, they can't. I bet my boy Dan right here. I bet my boy Dan is like just cringing, knowing that, hey guys, we just spoke at length about why stuff like this is dangerous, and now we're doing it.
Who were tweeting about this?
Look, social media can be a great place to connect with actual experts. It's just not the place that you should rely on for expertise when you're fact-checking a debate, or even when we have something like Election Day, where we know that the results will there will be gaslighting of those results. Use actual experts. Yes, experts are on Twitter, including our experts here at CBS News. However, it is simply not a place that you should lean on as scientific or as fact-based. It can be a point of discovery, but I would just highly, I don't want to prescribe what you should do, but I think that maybe I'm going to rely on experts through the course of this campaign and going forward.
I think that's a good idea. And if more people did that, if more people relied on experts and scientists and...
Yeah, like Taraji Henderson and this other actor that was talking about the peak eye. I don't even remember what his name was. Yeah, great. Yeah, perfect.
Doctors, maybe we would not be where we are today.
And I do want to point out, I know we have to move on, Vlad, but I want to point out that one of the goals of many of our adversaries is to gaslight and to demonize the mechanisms of democracy as well as actual experts. So let's put faith in experts, science, math, PhDs.
I actually fully agree with this, obviously. It's just the hard part is going and getting it. Like the hard part is you get flooded with 50,000 tweets or whatever. You get 50,000 tweets of some kind of information. You have no clue who are experts, who are not experts, who are actors, who are inauthentic accounts. Like, how are you going to wade through that in a second? You know what I mean? Like, in a second, wading through that while watching the debate, people just flat out are not going to take the time to go and research it and go to a academic or go to a website. Like, and they might not even have the information for a couple days. At that point, the news cycle's so fast. Like, it's one of those things where, yeah, in practice, it sounds great. Take something you saw on Twitter, go and find a PhD or go and find a scientific researcher. But how long until they give you an answer? Where do you find them? How hard is it to find them? Those kind of things are reality right there.